Bam.
Hey, this is Rich Manley, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
So easy. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. I just had on a guy named Buddy Levy who writes about people that went on adventures. Some of them are named Davy Crockett and people we heard of. Others are conquistadors and all kinds of things. And you and your grandfather, I guess, conspired to ultimately have you go on one of these grand adventures, but in a modern setting. And this is great. You've got a show on Tubi. Everybody can go out and watch. There is the link for that. Let's talk about the whole thing. So did your grandfather, when he wrote his book, we'll talk about the book in a second for all the audience to get you caught up, but did he do this by design to hand to somebody, to have them do something? Or is that your side of the work when you get this thing and say, I need to replicate this?
Yeah, so he would always keep notebooks, and he was a writer. So he wrote for a lot of different publications. And I mean, he had a lot of hobbies. I mean, he was a surgeon, which is back in the 40s, they actually taught surgeons to be better with their fingers by teaching them sleight of hand. So that's how he learned magic. But he also loved fly fishing. So he was writing for all these fly fishing magazines, and he was keeping notes on everywhere he went. And so he did have a bunch of journals, and he sent me one that he let me have before he passed, which, I keep to me to this day. And it actually is the basis for the show.
Yeah. When did that idea come to you?
The interesting thing is, it started with my first international travel, and it was actually in Egypt. I went with a buddy, a friend of mine. This was many, many years ago. And we went to this famous bazaar in Cairo called Khan el-Khalili. And we noticed that everybody was trying to heckle us and get us to buy these things. And I loved Egypt. I'd always been fascinated by the pyramids and the ancient Egyptians. So I wanted to find this little scarab beetle, and there was these trinkets, the sign of protection. And if you've seen The Mummy with Brendan Fraser,
yep.
It's those beetles that crawl up the guy's arms and all that. So I wanted one of those, and I went up to this older gentleman who was selling them, but he wasn't trying to push his products on us. So I told my buddy James, I said, hey, film this. I want to try to do a magic trick for this guy, and I'd never traveled outside the country, never done magic for anyone other than people in the US. And so I did this effect where I took a scarab beetle and I put it in my hand and I made it disappear, and it appeared on his shoulder. And I remember him his eyes lit up. He had the biggest smile, and within seconds, more vendors were coming up to us, and they were literally pushing their way around, circling me, trying to see more magic. So I started performing for them. People are grabbing at me. Let me see. And, we had about 50 people at the bazaar there. And one guy eventually pulled me aside, took me into his home. And he said to me, that was amazing what you did. Are you sure you're not Egyptian? And I said, no, I'm not, because they believe that there are people, they have magic. They're descendants of this magical, these powers, and they believe in real magic. And so when I went back to my hotel room with James, I said to him, man, after this experience and seeing how excited and happy everyone was, I started to realize why my grandfather did magic for people when he traveled. It is truly a way to bridge the cultural gap and to break the ice. So the show started in that moment. It didn't really start getting developed, but the idea was marinating many, many years ago of let's do a show where we can showcase how it connects people. And that's really how it started.
Yeah. And magic is a cross-cultural thing. I've got a lot of experience working overseas myself. I've actually been to that market that you're talking about. So I used to be a counterintelligence agent, and I worked for a little while in Egypt, and all those and this is during the time that The Mummy was a big movie. My daughter loved it, so I bought her a bunch of those, super touristy but super fun. I bought a bunch of those papyrus and rolled them up and just gave them to my friends. It's right after 9/11, and it was neat, and it's amazing. My job is to meet people and network and kind of perform a magic trick, right? I call myself Johnny Goodtime. Like, I'm not ever trying to lie to them, but I am a more heightened, fun version of myself. Yeah. And the things that they will show you and tell you and take you, like if you allow someone to show off their hometown, they will. And you will see things that no one else can see.
It's very true. It's very true. And I found that I would hear some of the secrets that many people didn't even hear about. Most tourists don't hear about, just simply because they were so enamored by the magic that I would do for them. Mm-hmm. And, it was phenomenal to see that. I mean, in some way I felt like I was a secret operative getting in and hearing more about, who they are as people. And it was just fantastic.
There's also another element too, just to kind of play with the spy angle. I don't know how many magicians you know, but in LA, there's a whole bunch of them, obviously, and I've been to Magic Castle, and there's a guy named Gutenplan who was an illusionist. And he does this great performance where he wraps up his head so he can't see anything, and he starts seeing things and pulling things, and it's such a wonderful act that you're captivated by this. And so one of the things he taught me about magic is, because I have a dumb little card trick that I do, it's super simple, but you take the simple thing, and then if you can make it about that person's magical ability to help me do the trick, boy, you get buy-in like crazy. And if I would have known that before I ever deployed, I might have had a deck of cards with me, and if they have a magic trick, you better believe I want them to perform it for me, because now we're exchanging in a way that is not about war. It's about people. And I'm visiting now instead of trying to get something from them, which is really where I'm trying to get to, right? Because I don't really want to harm anybody. I just want to talk to them so I can understand what's going on in the area. And magic would have been a great door opener.
Yeah. It really is. It's gotten me out of, it's actually got me out of some sticky situations in some of the places that I've traveled. Ironically enough, so it's been quite an interesting journey and tool, to have that.
Yeah. When you pitch your friend and you're like, I want to travel all over the world and spend a bunch of somebody's money, you, by the way, how in the world do you get that person to buy in on that? Because that doesn't seem like it's small scale, it appears, right? So not like a giant movie set, but still you gotta go places, you gotta live, you gotta eat, you gotta have gear, you probably have to hire locals. It's not a small ask.
No. The expenses were a lot more than, they weren't as much as, they weren't like millions, but it right. was still quite an expensive thing because you got to get the team together. And we kept things small. I mean, we like to be small just so that we don't leave a big footprint. I mean, there's normally right. 5 people on the team, myself, 2 camera individuals, and then we have a producer and either another assistant or someone who does multiple jobs. In Peru, we had actually a medic who was in the military, so he knew a lot of just on the go. He was really efficient. It was great to have him. And I mean, there's different places we go, different circles, different groups we bring, and the money fluctuates. But pitching that to someone, I have always come up with these crazy ideas, and we actually have some behind the scenes interviews where James, who is one of the producers on this that I pitched the original idea, he tells me, or he was telling the camera, and he said, Rich always has these wild ideas that he comes to me, saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. And the Egypt trip was something that wasn't really a pitch. It was just like, okay, I've been in LA for so long. I want to get out. I was going through a rough time, and I just needed to get some fresh air and see something different. And so he decided, what, I'm going to come with you. And he kind of spent a lot of his own money, and I spent a lot of my own money, and we just shared the costs. We went out and we experienced it. And then after that, years went by where I called him up again, and I said, you know what? Remember that idea we had when we saw how magic affected people in Egypt? Let's go do that in Peru. Let's develop an actual show based on that and based on this journal that my grandfather gave me, and use that as the roadmap. Okay, Peru is one of the places he went. Let's go to Peru. Okay, Africa, these places in Africa he went. Let's go there. And, make this a through line for it.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful through line, and it's very, it's very, Raiders of the Lost Ark-ish. You have this quest that you're on. You can almost see the airplane flying across the map as you guys are traveling around. And then these are things where, like, there's these unknowable coincidences that aren't coincidences. It's like, obviously these things are going to happen because you're in the space. I had a guy on the show a while back, and his grandfather was a tanker in World War II. And he always told this story about this cow that had stepped on a mine and got blown up. And so when this guy on the show, when he retraced his grandfather's tank trail where he went, along as they went through, he happened upon a village where they're like, yeah. And then one night, craziest thing happened. A cow stepped on a mine and blew up. And so he found the family that knew about this thing. And so he kept having all these instances where they're like, oh yeah, right. And then it kept smashing together. So you must have 100 of these things where even if it's a relationship or 3 away, you're in that world truly, and there's things left from that world that your grandfather saw.
Yes. Yeah. That sort of happened when we went to Pitamarca. It was this village in the Andes, and it's about 12,000 feet up, and the air was really thin. We kind of bit off more than we could chew because we weren't really ready to be climbing up and getting to that village. And so we met this shaman, and this shaman was doing this ritual to Pachamama. In their culture, that's Mother Earth. And so basically she is the provider of the land for these Quechua in this small village. And when you do the ritual, they give all these trinkets and these offerings to Mother Earth. And if it's a success, they have a good harvest. If it's not a success, then they have a bad harvest. So they can't afford that. And so when we went there, I met the shaman, and I had looked in my grandfather's journal, and he had met, not the same shaman, but he had met a similar shaman who did a similar ritual. And he had given, I believe it was a pocket watch of his that he had given up, or I think it was a compass. And he gave that to them as an offering. And, they didn't have, it wasn't the same village, but it just made me think, what can I give? What can I give? And I also had a watch that I gave up just in homage to my grandfather, the same type of thing. And the ritual was just absolutely, beautiful. And it was just exactly how my grandfather described it, where, you're sitting there and the whole village is surrounded and you're watching the Andes. And this was a very strange occurrence because although I do believe being a magician and supernatural occurrences, I think someone that believes in that also is very skeptical, because if you've seen real things, then you're skeptic of all the things that are not. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, let's see how this ritual turns out. And it was overcast. The sky was overcast. And I was told that if Mother Earth was happy, the skies would open. And so it was the strangest thing. Could have been a coincidence. I don't know. But after the ritual was concluded, we all sipped some sweet wine and we huddled around. The shaman burnt all the offerings, and then the skies actually opened up and the rays of sun came through, and they basically shined upon the village. And I remember, of all the things and all the places I visited, I remember that moment thinking, is this real? Is this a coincidence? This is just bizarre, but it really happened. So I was really happy I went there, and I did follow my grandfather's footsteps in that regard.
The show was super fun. I enjoyed watching it. I saw that part with the watch, and it was fun to just when you see these things that happen and in real life, and you realize, wow, these coincidences happen so often. They're such a delight that maybe they're not coincidences. Anyhow, everybody should go watch the show. It's on Tubi. It's right there. There's the link. Just type in Culture Shock and go to Tubi. You'll find it in 2 seconds. But check it out. How has the show been received? This is a new way of creating things, right? Like 30 years ago, you and Richard J. Cannell would be competing for time on ABC, and that's a tough ballgame, right?
Yeah.
But now anybody who can raise something can go out and publish to Vimeo, publish to Amazon, publish to Tubi, all these places where you're not bound by the old rules. And so how have you done with it?
I've done pretty well. It's been a long process. I mean, this has been a process that's been going on for about 7 years now. I mean, we started developing the concept 2 years ago, or 2 years, probably 9 years ago. So 2 years before those 7 years. And then 7 years ago, we started doing some pitches. And, I work with a lot of different producers out here. So it really is the people you meet. And I have producers that have worked on, big shows. And so we had pitched it to bigger networks. We pitched it to, Netflix and Disney Plus. And, Disney was very interested in it at the time when we pitched it, but we were pitching it around COVID. And so the issue was that it's a travel-based show, and we wanted multiple seasons. And we are getting close to our ending the first season, and they were like, well, let's revisit this, later, because it's just not the right time for it. So we were like, okay, well, we don't really want to wait around. And so we finally, we settled, let's do Tubi, and we got on Tubi, and it's been great with them. And the show's, many people have been saying they love it. So I'm happy about that. And all we can do is wait and see. We've got a second season coming out. So it's still running hot. And then we're hoping for a third season after that, and just keep going.
And do you have access to more of your grandfather's books? Like, could you turn this into, look, these things, travel shows, boy, when they work.
Yeah. So I've got that one journal does have a lot of writing in it. And my mom has a lot more of his writings. She kind of kept a lot of it. And my mom's actually she's a sister to 4 other brothers. So they kind of have some of the other things that my grandfather had too. But between all of his writings, there's lots of other places he went, on the list, the short list. We've got, areas in Papua New Guinea with the Asmat tribe, who are actually cannibals over there. There's a small group of them that, you need government protection when you go in and you meet them. Mongolia, Madagascar, so Borneo. We've got a lot of areas we're very interested in going, in places my grandfather went. So you're right. It is, in a sense, endless in terms of how many countries and places there are to visit, but it does have a lot of longevity.
Yeah. Where have you finished the whole book, or where have you stopped?
Yes. So I've gone through it. We did 6 episodes. So there's 6 episodes. So 6 locations, and some of them are in the same location. So the first 2 episodes are actually in Peru. One's in the Amazon, one's in the Andes. So we kind of broke that up because there was just so much to go through. And the other subsequent episodes are in Africa. Then the final one is back in the U.S. on the West Coast. But the reason we did that was because there is just so many places that he visited, and so much content in his books. So he was writing a lot about the different places he went. And we were like, well, you know what? We could just do a whole season in Peru. We could probably just do a whole season in Africa, or multiple seasons, because there's so many rich stories that he has to tell. But I started saying, well, we've got this book, but at the same time, we don't want to be bound to it. One thing I know my grandfather would want me to do, even when I was a kid, he'd always say, find your own adventure, sort of deal. And he would say, I did all these travels, and here's my book, but I really want you to find your own way, because it's all about learning. And so I think that too has something to say of like, okay, well, if we want to go here, it's not in the book. We can kind of find our own adventure in that place.
Yeah, I'm putting links up here for all of Rich's work while he's talking. So go check out these websites. For sure, check out the Tubi series. It is delightful. I started watching it, and I don't want to chew it all, much as, like we all want to do this. I try not to just like rah, 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 and chew it all up and be like, when's it going to come out again? So I try to like be deliberate and do like a once a week kind of thing, because that for me is more enjoyable. But I'm having a great time making my way through it. And it makes me... it gives me that wanderlust that a lot of us have. And I'm like, why don't I go to Peru? Why don't I go to Bolivia? And get off the couch. And this is a great gift that your grandfather gives all of us, is take that inspiration to go out and see something. And by the way, anybody who's thinking about traveling, you don't got to go to Bolivia. You can just go in your hometown and go to those places that you should have gone to, but never have. If you got a beach, if you got a mountain, if you got a stream, if you got another church, you can go do a lot of exploring in another religion. You don't got to believe your religion, but you can go visit these people and do things. So get out there and go experience the world. It turns out that this is a big, beautiful nation full of wonderful, beautiful people. You just got to go see them. Anyhow, there's Pete's soapbox, and put that to the side and let you get back on yours. What have you picked up from these adventures? Your grandfather's like, go do your adventure. You go, it's all about learning. What have you learned?
Yeah, that's, going to Peru specifically, that was an eye-opener. It was, the Andes were amazing, but I think going into the Amazon, you had to travel by boat along the Madre de Diaz, and it was just a long trek. I mean, it took us half a day, and we were going in the rainy season. So, we had to camp in the jungle, and we weren't, unfortunately, we captured some of that footage, but we couldn't get a lot of it because it was just such a logistically, our tents were flooding with water. We're on the banks of the river. It was like I was on a waterbed or a water at that point. And, nobody was sleeping. And, one of the fixtures that were with us say, don't go into the jungle, go to the bathroom by yourself. There's vipers that hang from the trees. You get bitten by one of them, and we don't really have anyone to help you. We're way out here. So everyone had to be really careful. We were supposed to make that trip in one day, but because there was so much debris on the water, we had to pull over and just find camp in some random spot in the jungle. So we were really out there. And then, so when we finally got to that village, Palma Real, it was what really fascinated me the most, and I think what really touched me was that these kids would come up to me and they'd want to see this magic. Like they greeted me with things they had made, crafts they had made, and they wanted to show me. And they did this in Africa too, just things they wanted to show that they had made. And they only had one community TV, and a lot of the kids just played soccer. And what I picked up from that was that magic made them so happy because they hadn't seen it. And to them, it was real, and they still had that sense of, I haven't seen it over and over again, like how we have with our cell phones or TVs, and we're watching this and we're getting inundated with all these things. And, it kind of becomes stale. It's like, oh, there's another magic trick, or there's this. But to them, it was the first time they had seen something like this. And, they also, they told stories to each other. They ate closely together. They bonded. And I think I kind of took away from that in our modern world, coming back home, we're so stuck on our cell phones or computers, and we don't really interact as much face to face or, bond together like these communities do. And I think that connection was a big learning thing for me, like not to lose the human connection. And a lot of these, I say a lot of these communities are time capsules, really, to remind us of our past and where we came from and what we slowly lost, in the sense of just being a community and not being stuck to all these electronics and getting out there, just like you said, take a walk, see your local market, or go to your, the local mountain you have, or whatever it may be, and just take a moment and enjoy it.
Yeah, take a moment and enjoy it. Yeah, go experience it.
Yeah.
Get your face out of your device. We're all guilty of it. I do it too. But talk to your cashier at your local grocery store. Develop a relationship. Be part of a community, because it is rewarding, and you can lift one another up. And sometimes you get to lift, and other times you get lifted up. If you're just always on your own, man, it's a tough way to live alone, and you don't have to. So I love the overall message that you're talking about. What so you say season 2 is done, and is it posted, or is it to be released?
So season 1's out. Season 2 we're still filming. We are actually filming in Bolivia. Is going to be the first episode, and then I'll tease the second one. We'll be in Tanzania. We're going to do a Kilimanjaro thing in Mount Kenya. So we will go back to Africa, and I guess we technically are going back to South America as well. But we will do some other episodes in Asia for this season. But season 2 is underway and filming.
I love it. When you go down to where the Quechua people are, I know people that speak Quechua, right? And so it's helpful to have interpreters. Have you ever had any training on how to work with an interpreter, or how to deal with these? You're doing rougher versions of travel. Do you have any experience doing that stuff?
No, so I do a lot of research. So I'm always reading, because I want to make sure I research the communities and the people I go see. But I guess my weakness is language. I'm not too good at speaking the language, and so I always have someone who is translating. And I remember I did get into kind of a sticky situation where, and I wish I'd done more research, but I was in Pinamarca, which is the bigger community below the larger village where we did the ceremony. And I just wanted to take some photos of these Quechua women that were selling fruits at a stand. And so I took out my camera and I was about to take some photos, and I noticed that they were all kind of cowering in the corner, as if they were afraid of me. And so I put down the camera and I looked over at everyone. I said, they're protecting their faces and everything. I said, so what's happening here? And so our fixer came over and he said, the Quechua believe, which is why we shouldn't do any filming here. It's okay we've let them know that it's okay to do it at higher elevation, and they're okay with the filming. But here, they strongly believe, some groups believe, that the camera steals your soul. So it's one of those things where, you're pointing the camera directly at them and they think that, this is a very dangerous situation they're in. So, that was eye-opening for me. And I started thinking, oh man, if only I had known that, but those are some of the things that, if you don't do the research and you miss something like that, you may be taking photos and you may not realize, oh, wow, I'm taking photos and people are actually terrified of what's happening. So it's important to really do the research before you go and not. I know there's a lot of people that love to travel, but and I've been to many different countries where, the cultures kind of get trampled on in a way, and in these people, it's not like a zoo where we're going to see them. It truly is. There are people living their lives, and it's important to remember that is their life, what they're doing, and you don't want to invade on it.
Yeah. There's a lot there, and one of the things that I have discovered, I'm pretty dang good with culture now, is that one, prepare and then wipe all that preparation out of your head and don't rely on it as your guide. It just gives you familiarity, and then you go encounter people where they're at, and you can use. And so first off, never try to. This is just my point of view and how I do this. Never try to out Iraq and Iraqi. Ask them. Like, you're not supposed to eat with your left hand in Iraq, and so I'll say to them, "This is the trick that I learned. This is my magic trick," and I'll say, I'm from California and I eat with my left hand. And they're like, yeah, Pete, we know you're not Islamic. You're not Iraqi. You do things like Americans do. It's no big deal. Eat with your left hand. We're all well aware that you're not us. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so like, they'll teach you if you ask like, hey, is Ramadan like Christmas? They're like, yeah, kind of. And they'll explain it to you. Then they'll say, what's Christmas like though? Like, I know Ramadan. And so all of a sudden you have this exchange going on, and you can find like, what's the culturally appropriate way to do this? I would love to take pictures. It's so beautiful here. You all are wonderful. I want to capture this experience. And all of a sudden somebody will say, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Here's what I'll do. And then you're able to do it, but you're using their culture to your advantage, because you're like, I want to work within it. I don't want to take it. I don't want to ape it. I just want to understand, how do I do this in a way that is appropriate for you all? And to this level of surrendering my culture for their path to get what I want done, I would even go, and this will sound crazy, but in a combat setting, it's not. We never want to like tell anybody we're coming. We always want to have control of everything. And so I would go to these officials and say, hey, it would help me if I could talk to you, but I don't want to put you in a spot. I know it can be dangerous talking to Americans. What's the best way to meet? And they're like, oh, I'll come by your house, the farm, the post that I'm on. I'll come grab you. I'll have my guy do it. We'll put you in the back of the truck, all safe and everything, and I'll protect you, and we'll go to my house and we'll just have the meeting there in private. But I don't want to come to you, and I don't want you to come to my office, because that does cause threat. And so now I've got to decide, oh my gosh, am I going to get in this guy's assistant's car in the back? It's not in the back like in the payload, but like in the back seat. Am I going to go do that? And then who do I tell on the American side? Because they for sure don't want me to do that. But now I'm in this magical space where, and look, I'm not advising people to do this. This is a very professional skill. But when you get up there at that level, when you can wrap yourself and protect yourself in their culture, where a sheikh says, Peter, you will be safe. Don't worry about it. You have my word. Now I've got to decide if I believe them or not. Let's say that I do. Now I can be a great guest and let them be a great host. And if they love telling you things, they are going to open up in a way. They're going to give you a richness that you can't get when you got 20 dudes with guns all around you. I'm not advocating going out and exposing yourself to unnecessary risk, but I am saying is if you use culture to your advantage and you allow things that are, and I call it miscomfort, like it's not uncomfortable. You just don't know what comfortable is in this place. If you can accept that and enter into their space in a way that they'll accept you, man, you'll rocket forward. Anywhere you go, you can do this cultural formula where instead of fearing offense, you say, this is how I do things. How do you do things? And then you'll create these bridgings where you can just simply run across the bridge super fast and then come back and tell your friends, like, I saw the most amazing things in Egypt. I wasn't in the tourist area. I went and I had falafel and, whatever, right? And that's how I approach the cultural side of it. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree very much so. And, there was a lot of trial and error for me. So, I urge anyone that really wants to travel in this way, because I really, when I travel, I try to avoid a lot of tourist spots, and I always say to my fixtures, show me the real country. I want to see the real thing. And that's, a lot of times it's hard for them to understand that. I mean, I did the same thing in Sri Lanka, and what was funny was when I went to Sri Lanka, the guide, his name's Chintaka, and he was such a pleasant guy. He's such a sweet guy, and he really wanted to make my experience great. And it was a scouting mission, so I wasn't really filming in Sri Lanka. I was scouting the country just to see where we could film. And so we went to this famous waterfall, and there's all these European tourists taking photos of the waterfall. And he's like, this is a very beautiful waterfall. Everyone takes photos of this. And I just turned around and I walked over to this guy who was painting the waterfall. He was a Sri Lankan. He was a man just painting this waterfall. And I went over and started just looking at his painting. And so Chintaka comes over to me and he's like, Mr. Rich, what are you doing? Why do you want to watch this man? And I said, well, Chintaka, this is the real Sri Lanka. This is what I want to see. I don't really care about the waterfall. I mean, I care about he's painting this waterfall. It's beautiful. Why is no one coming over to look at him? To me is like seeing the world from that perspective. I'm looking at it from that perspective, seeing that. And everyone else is just like, I got to get this waterfall. But I think that's what we're missing. We're missing the diamonds in the rough sometimes when we travel, and seeing the people that are just, no one's paying attention to, but they're doing amazing things and they have amazing stories. And going back to that in Egypt, like I said, trial and error, when you are going out and you want to travel in more of an off the beaten path, you experience certain things. I mean, I dealt with in Ethiopia, tribal warfare. I got caught in that, and there was, bullets flying, and we actually had to get to safety. It was, pretty traumatic experience. And then in Egypt, my first travel, I got held up by gunpoint at a temple and almost imprisoned because I didn't realize that you couldn't film in a temple. And I had guards pointing. I found myself with guards pointing AK-47s at my face, about 20 of them in the temple square. And I was like, there's no way they're going to shoot an American tourist. I felt like at that point, I didn't realize you couldn't use a camera, but I felt at that point it was surreal to the point of where I hadn't traveled outside the country, and it felt like a movie. And I said to myself, it feels like I'm watching this. There's no way I'm going to jail or I'm going to be shot. That this can't happen. And my friend who was with me was a bounty hunter, and he worked in law enforcement, and he was a fugitive recovery agent. And he said, when I tried to talk to them, he said, shut up. Let me just shut up. And so that's what he said. And I'm like, okay. And, he eventually got us out of it by paying them off. He basically said, okay, all they wanted was money. It was a scare tactic. They wanted money. And we got out of that. But there was a lot of learning that went into it. And, coming out of that, I was like, okay, just like you said, it is really going and not being so just kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this, but ask the culture, talk to them, communicate.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say necessarily ask for permission necessarily as your starting point. It's like, I'd like to do this. How would that work here? That kind of approach. And then let them kind of guide you, like this is what my job is. I have to whatever, talk to these people, climb this mountain, whatever that thing is.
Yes.
And then, they might tell you the thing like, oh, nobody does that. Let me show you the real thing. You're like, oh, that's even more of what I want. Right. And get to that inside access, getting invited to a wedding in a foreign country. Like, oh, you'd be our guest of honor. First off, who wouldn't want to do that? And wow. And so that's the kind of things that you and I are talking about when you get these rich experiences where now, you're the guest of honor at somebody's wedding. And for the rest of their lives in that village, I talk about the time when that American from LA came down and sat in our wedding. Oh my gosh, Mr. Rich, what a wonderful guy.
Yes, exactly. And, it's funny because Chintaka, back to Sri Lanka, he brought me to see his family because after that moment where I went to go see the painter and the artist, he's like, oh, I get it. You want to see the real Sri Lanka. So he brought me to his village where he grew up, and his mom had made all the smorgasbord of just treats and food and everything for me to just eat. And, he was like, oh, this is Mr. Rich. He's, a very famous magician from Los Angeles. We have to take photos of him. I mean, he was glamorizing me to the extent of like, oh, well, and then I realized, okay, well, this is a big deal for them. They truly are very happy to have me here. So, you play into it a little bit, like, oh well, thank you so much, and I'd love to have the food, and thanks so much for your parents for having me here, and it's just it's a great experience.
Yeah, that's that concept of being a great guest. Allow them to be great hosts, and so to do that, you're a great guest.
Yes.
And I love that thing. What the second season, what's different about it? I mean, you guys learned a lot by doing the first season. What have you picked up on the production side?
So the first season really delves into this journal and following it and using it as the roadmap. And it's very cultural. And we have a lot of the stories. So there's a lot of people's stories. You see people, you learn about the connection that magic has and bringing people together. The second season delves more into the adventure, and you kind of see that in the last episode, which is in the Western United States. There's more kind of adventure that's growing, and I start talking about in my grandfather's journal how he was really he wasn't obsessed, but he loved adventure, and he had climbed the Matterhorn back in the day with the leather boots and wooden pielette, and so he didn't have all the gear that we have now. And he loved rock climbing, he loved fly fishing, he loved taking his canoe on the river and even whitewater. And he was really into that. So the second season's really going to kind of lean into more of the adventure to get to the community. So whitewater kayaking to get to a community in Bolivia, climbing mountains, mountaineering, climbing 6,000 meter peaks, and then seeing how these people live. In Nepal, there's stories of the Sherpas and how they have to set routes for people and what their lives are like, and then climbing up those giant 8,000 meter peaks in the Himalayas and what it takes, so more of that adventurous side within the storytelling I think we're going to have. So
where do you want to get to that's on the horizon that maybe you haven't gotten to yet?
Man, that's hard. There's a lot.
Yeah, because when you get to some places, there's more places to get to and back to also.
Yeah. So if it had to be a place like a country, I mean, I've always been fascinated by Madagascar. Don't ask me why, but I've always wanted to get there. That is on our list so I'm very excited about that, by the way. But I just think there's a lot there. And I had always been very fascinated by the golden age of exploration. Also in the 1700s, I had been fascinated by pirates, and that Madagascar was a pirate haven and a place where they would actually have green boats. And so there's a lot of history and stories of sunken treasure and ships off the coast of Madagascar. And I was actually talking to an archaeologist who said, who lives in Florida, who said he had ancient maps of where some of these boats would be. These Spanish vessels had sunk off the coast of Madagascar, and he was trying to work with the government to get permits to dive there because it's very difficult to dive in Madagascar or even go anywhere to search for a sunken ship. And he had been working on it for years. And so that really kind of fascinates me from an Indiana Jones, I guess, perspective. And culture there is very rich too. They have on the West Coast, it's all about fishing, and they have fishing villages. Further south, there's an underwater flooded cave that is a ceremonial cave to this community, and they believe it's very sacred, where there's million-year-old lemur fossils that are on a pedestal there. And so that's fascinating too. There's just all these stories I feel that are so rich there that, that's a place I'm just very excited.
And where are you trying to get back to?
I'm going to, I've been here so many times, but I loved Egypt. There's something about the pyramids, even though I've been there so many times, that when you see them, it's like I could just stand and look at them, because you're always wondering, how did this happen? And there's something more to it, and what is the answer? And you're not going to find it, but I think it's Egypt.
It is crazy when you go to those things. One, how big they are. People don't get we would drive from the Sinai Peninsula. So I was doing military stuff. We were driving in, and I'm like, it's like Ben Kenobi. Like, those aren't mountains, because they're so gigantic, and they're up high on that ridge or on that plateau. It's crazy. And then you get to them, and you just realize, these stones, so many of them are taller than you or 2/3 your height. And everything about it is so big. And the other thing that struck me was how far the Sphinx is from the pyramids. It's got to be a mile. And it doesn't look that way in the picture because they always kind of act like they're in the same spot, but
yeah,
and they're not in the same spot, but they're not close to each other at all.
No. And have you been inside the Great Pyramid? Were you able to get? Yeah. And there's I believe it's the King's or Queen's Chamber. I think it was the King's Chamber, but when you get there, it's just this amazing energy. It's society. Like if you make a sound, that sound reverberates throughout the whole pyramid. James was with me and he was doing the same thing. He's like, this seems like it's got some sort of acoustic property to it, and he started making sounds and he's like, do you hear that? It's echoing throughout the whole pyramid. And you could. And it's just so fascinating,
It is fascinating. And it's also when you go inside, I'll say it's a little disappointing, because there's no Disney touch, So first off, everybody watching, you walk up these stairs on the outside of it, and then you're a little bit winded because you went up this thing and you're kind of excited, and then you go down, and you're crunched down, and you're like, this air is disgusting. It's like everybody's lung air. Yes. And then you go up and you huff it and puff it again. You're like, and then you get into that chamber. And there's no mummy, there's no there was a dude, like a 6'8" tall Egyptian guy, and he's like telling us all about the chamber, and if you wanted to leave and be nice, you had to pay that guy some money because he's stood right in front of the doorway, and you're like, yes. And the other thing that happens, and I'll shut up and let you talk about it, but when you come out, you're like, I'm desperate to ride a camel, and then you get on when you're like, holy shit, these things are scary. I am so far in the air. And this guy's booking you out towards the desert, and you're like, hey, turn around. I want to go back. I'm done. They're like, oh, you got to pay to come back.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. I think we probably probably got rid of the money in a number of ATMs because we just always had to have cash on us. I mean, whether it was a taxi driver or whoever, we had to constantly pay people. But that did change when I started doing magic. When they started seeing the magic, they were like, "Oh no, here, come, you're different. Let's But it was that sort of thing, and there was. Did you go to the Valley of Kings with King Tutankhamun's tomb in that area?
No, but we did go to Saqqara and I think that was it because we went to a couple of, we went to the I got a very, very, very fortunate. My partner ended up being Dr. Zawas, who was at the time the #1 Egyptologist.
Dr. Nawas, yeah,
Dr. Nawas, Zaki Nawas, and he's like, Pete, I will give you the special tour inside the museum. And at the time, that was the new version. Now they have a new version coming, but it was amazing. And he would talk about all these different mummies and had me in like all this special. It was wonderful. So I got a couple of very unique things that were off of the normal tourist thing. Again, because, we do our magic that we do.
Yeah, exactly. And what I was going to mention that the Valley of the Kings, which is really interesting. They have this I guess, you've heard of the Howard Carter, the curse of King Tutankhamun's tomb, and that it was cursed. So again, this was another strange occurrence that happened. And I've had these occurrences happen here and there, like the one in Peru. When we went down to go see King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings, they say no cell phones, nothing like that. Don't use your phone. Unless you had money. And we did for this one guy who, he kind of leaned over to me and he's like, you wanted to, and so I looked at him and James said, he's basically saying, give him money and you can take photos. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we gave him some cash and we just quickly did a little video of his sarcophagus. And I don't know whether Tutankhamun was in there at the time. Sometimes they either have him in there or they don't, but I think that he was in the tomb. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We got back up and we're trying to review the footage back at the hotel. And, I just equated to some glitch in the phone. But as we're like, yeah, let's take a look at the video, it just kept going 1 second and back and forth. And it would not play the video. And there was a glitch where it would go forward and back for 1 second, back and forth. And I was like, wait a minute, we took a 20-second video of this. What happened? And James looked at me and he said, it's the curse. It's the curse. And, again, another weird thing. It was probably because we were so far underground, but
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, you know.
It is one of those things. Yeah. And that there was some of the Tutankhamun things were there when I was in that part of the museum, and it was magnificent to see all of it. It's amazing to think what they did for kings that had a lot of things. It was remarkable. And there was an old, he might have just passed right before we got there, but this like 100-year-old French archaeologist that was working at Saqqara, and just that whole
Oh,
site.
yes.
Yeah, and it's impossibly wonderful to have your whole career studying these things, and then so why wouldn't you want to talk to these people who are experts and they're there working every day because they're desperate to talk about the thing that they're so excited about, like they are doing Indiana Jones for real right there.
Yeah.
And that guy would talk. The guy that I talked to wasn't the ancient French guy, but he was also very old. And he was like, "Oh, this and this and this and this," and he just filled my head with all these things. He's like, "We're discovering things. We're going to dig these things out." And he was describing a lot of the things that we've seen in the last 20 years because they were, excavating all of these things. They've learned so much about that area. It's amazing. So yeah, anybody who's thinking about Egypt definitely should go. And learn a couple magic tricks. Hey, I want to talk to you about magic for a second too, because when you're doing this, okay, so are you an active working magician, or is magic just part of who you are on a day-to-day basis?
I don't go out and do, I guess, parties and events. And so I don't work in that capacity as a magician.
Right.
I would say I'm more on the entertainment side, as it's part of my personality and who I am.
Right.
And I guess very much in the way that Chris Angel or David Blaine came up and they did their series with street magic for people. And, that was just part of their personality. And I think that's, for me, it's adventure, travel, and magic. Magic is a way for me to, again, like my grandfather did, bridge that cultural gap and break the ice so that I can start learning about their traditions and ways of life, And so, yeah, I don't really do any of those events, but I am doing a stage show here in Los Angeles, and it will be touring throughout the United States. And it's a stage show that's called Diary of Magic, based off my grandfather's diary, his journal. And it goes through exactly what the show's about, all these places I visited. And then I tell my stories of, oh, this happened here. I met this person here in Sri Lanka. I met an exorcist who was, performing exorcisms in this Veda village. And then I perform a routine of something that he described, like swallowing needles and pulling needles out, and what the significance of that is. So I showcase magic within the various countries that I go to based on what I've seen or stories or legends I've heard of those people. Yeah. And so that's the live show.
So are you actively developing new tricks then, new illusions, or what are you doing with that?
Yeah. So in that regard, yes. So those are, again, that's going to be, it's more of a stage show. So those are a little bit bigger. Some of them are still intimate and sleight of hand, but I'm always kind of working on, okay, how can I develop this? This was a story that was told in Ethiopia. So how can I take this legend in Ethiopia or something I heard from Ethiopia and turn it into a magic effect that's entertaining? So yeah, I'm always working on that.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, a couple more magic tricks. That's what I need, and just ones that you can just do when you're out and about, right? Like, I don't know. I suppose you don't have to have a deck of cards. That's pretty easy to carry them around, but still, you can just things. What are some things like you made that scarab beetle appear in the guy's shoulder? That's a great trick, but that must be based off of another trick where you know how to use sleight of hand to all of a sudden have it appear there.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I learned the basics when I was a kid. I mean, my grandfather showed me my first card trick at 10 years old, and it was a card vanish that you kind of use your hand and you hide the card and you make the card vanish. Very difficult when you have small hands and you're 10 years old, and I had to really work on getting it. Right. But, he also showed me coin magic, and the coin magic techniques also work with those scarab beetles or any trinkets, really. So when I learned the basics of magic and sleight of hand, I kind of go into like comedic, like comics go into their stand-up and improv. It's kind of the same way with magicians. When you know the basics, I could look at a scarab beetle and say, oh, well, I could do this sleight of hand and this sleight of hand and do this on the spot. So that particular trick that I did for that older gentleman was kind of an improv thing. I said, oh, okay, I can make it disappear. I'm going to make it appear on him. This is how I'm going to do it. And so you just use those basic understandings to just come up with it on the fly. But there's so many things you can do without cards for your friends and family that are, on YouTube now that you could learn a card vanish or a coin vanish or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. And have you ever been to the Magic Castle? Are you a member over there? It's a super great place. I love it.
Yeah, I used to years ago. I used to perform there. So I used to perform at the Magic Castle. I was a member. I'm no longer a member. I don't go there that much anymore, but it's a great spot, and I used to love going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got an itch to get back, and it's amazing how technology is enhancing magic in a wonderful way too. Just some of the stuff that you see, and I guess it's not all magic. There's illusions. There's all kinds of different. It's almost like vaudeville in the modern age. Where this person's going to juggle and do some part of their act or whatever it is. And so, it's a neat place to get. If you guys ever get a chance to go, you definitely go check out the Magic Castle. Hey, I've had you for almost an hour, and I got something else coming up too. So I wanted to make sure I let you say anything else you wanted to say and promote whatever else you want to promote. It's been a delight meeting you, man. I really appreciate it. So much fun talking about travel. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. So yeah, if anyone wants to watch the show, again, it's Culture Shock. Bridging Cultures Through Magic. It's on Tubi TV. You can search it up. If you do search Culture Shock alone, you might get some other programs. But so Culture Shock, Bridging Cultures Through Magic, you'll get it. It's 6 episodes out. We're shooting our 2nd season now, so that'll come up soon enough. And if you want any updates on that, go to www.cultureshockmagic.com and you'll get all the updates on Culture Shock. If you want to learn more about me, it's www.expeditionrich.com or follow me on Instagram, Rich C. Manley, for all of the updates.
All right, I'm going to put the Culture Shock Magic on that. Most of the other ones are already in the remarks, you guys. You can find all that stuff. Hang in there one sec, Rich. I'll be right back to you. Everybody else, I will see you tomorrow.